We might open it up. I think we've got people who will roll in for the next hour. So, yeah, very topical after the budget last night. So I'm sure there might be a few questions. Just welcome to everyone. And it is a highly interactive session 6 of our business mentoring series, brought to you proudly by Andrew and myself, the Phillips Brothers Foundation, Stefan Kazakis from the Business Benchmark Group, and Judd Murray from the Cognisize Foundation. A very special guest today, Tim Donohue from PMD Financial Advisors, will be addressing us very soon. Of course, I've got my little ties behind me there, Collingwood and Saints. So just a little shout out to Tom and Ed. I know there's a few young entrepreneurs on the calls and trying to learn some tricks of the trade. And we really love helping young people and startups and new business. So big shout out to those that have been separated from their families, but doing their career and their job and doing us all proud. And I know, Stefan, you're a Mad Pies supporter. And hopefully a few of the Saints, we want the Saints to win their first premiership since about when we were born. So good luck to the red, white and black there. And hopefully the next couple of matches are going to be as exciting as they were last weekend. It's been a great series, and we looked through those sessions briefly. We started with the why and asking that question first, why you do business, why you do what you do. And starting with that really can open up, your whole world to the purpose and the passion, the drive you'll have when you know what your why is. That belief then really backing yourself and believing in what you can do, and you're relying on those strengths and those abilities to apply is crucial to having a successful business. The building capacity. Once you get some momentum going, really structuring that up and organising it so it can really achieve the goals you set as that business evolves. Then making an impact was in session 4. So really ramming it home, building that base, driving home your expertise and making the numbers add up and count so you can do what you need to do with it. And that could be a social impact, and it could be helping other people. Could be building your own foundations, which is a bit of our theme too, is what we can actually give back, and what messages we want to give to the next generations to run a great world. Adaptability was our last session, so that ability to change, that change management. We talked a bit about the appreciative inquiry method, and also making sure that we can be flexible in these times like COVID. So some great input there. They're all on the website, so if you want to revise any of those, please go back and have a look through Business Benchmark Group or the Phillips Brothers Foundation. Today is all about the power of now and sort of what the new normal is, and getting up to date with budget and some major things here and across the world that we can really focus in a positive light to carry on our business as a new normal. In terms of the power of now, I think that the big thing with that too is we all have those identities, our business identity and our social identity, our family identity. But I suppose the power of being your real self, being the real you and being in that moment as much as you can. There's always going to be past things that can attract your mind and things you're a little bit anxious about thinking, or fears you may have going forward about, the business climate or how things are going to roll out with your job and your old roles you may have had. So there's a lot of things there to try and work through in this difficult time. But just remembering, and a lot of this is Judd's great work through his getting yourself right first has been a big theme across it, that, the real you will accept what is now. Like it's, we can't really change a lot. We can do all the precautions and listen to all the advice, but it is what it is. And accepting that, and the old sayings of control what you can, write those lists, journal it, do what it is daily that you can actually have an influence on and make something good of a tough situation. Being free of the past and not thinking too far into the future. And, the presence is the key thing, to be, right in that moment. They say the top performers, especially in the AFL clubs, I know they've done a lot of work in this too, is that if enough players, enough times can be in the moment when they've got to go to a hard contest or win a ball or make a play in a game that sets up their team for success, you need to be pretty clear. And that's why Judd's work's so good with this as well, that when you get that clarity and that real feeling, you get the power of being in the now, right there in the presence. You feel powerful. You feel like you can knock walls down, and your energy's right at the tipping point, right at the top there. And it's probably closest to where you start feeling like I'm using my full potential. And I think that's the real, I suppose we try to have a little sporting spray across our segments as well, because that's how Andrew and I really learned from our, elite sporting backgrounds and coaching backgrounds, and through some great business mentors. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Tim Donoghue, and I'm just going to give Tim a little bit of a pump up there. And, he's been a fantastic person for the Camp Australia business, and Andrew and I as personal mentors. Probably our number one man, and his brother Paul Donoghue sat on our advisory boards all the way through our business, and he's done just a fantastic job with a monumental sale process for those that at that scale of their business, where they're looking to get out or merge or acquire or sell out. Tim's been at the forefront of that, as well as owning plenty of businesses, buying and selling, and advising a lot of our young callers on the line as well with the steps to take, to make sure that, you're really efficient with your processes and your plans to realise what you want to do. He's been at PwC, a highly established career there as an accountant, leading the Western Pacific Group, numerous financial advising businesses. And he's had extensive experience, as I said, buying and selling in all sorts of different businesses, from fence building to financial products to childcare. He's done a lot over 40 years in his business career. As I said, 20 years of service, as an advisory member of our board, and instrumental in setting up what was a monumental business transaction at the end a few years ago for us. He's got over 800 employees himself, so he's got a big bunch there. So combined with that nous and strategic and financial management, you've got to have the people skills. And as Stefan and Andrew and Judd attest to, that's where a lot of that power now comes from. Not just you, but that ability to gather the people. And Tim is one of the best I've seen do it. So over to you, and a warm welcome this morning, Tim.
Great, thanks, Anthony. And first, let me just say what a great initiative this is that you've got started in a very short period of time, right? Because business is a very lonely place. And what I mean by lonely, it's very hard to know always what to do in your own businesses. And obviously, you've got a range of businesses and business owners and managers. So anyway, thanks for the invitation. I thought today what I would do is really two things. One, just to put some framework around where the world is at right now economically. And then number two, give you some insights as to what I'm telling people to do in businesses now, but more importantly, what I'm doing in my own businesses, right? And I think that might be useful. Let me just start by saying this. I think that I've got an accounting background and an economics background. Now, one of the things I love about accounting is that accounting is it's quantifiable, right? So the numbers and the scoreboards, and the scoreboard for all your businesses, folks, are the accounts, right? So they're the cash flow statements, they're the assets, liability statements, and that's what I call the scoreboard. And it's something that many businesses don't quite get right. And the scoreboard is very important. Across my 6 businesses, I get a report once a month that's got about 5 things on it. And it's very simple. It's assets, it's liabilities, it's income and expenses, and it's profits and loss, and it's cash in the bank, right? But if you have a very simple scoreboard, it gives you a lot more control and allows you to make way better decision making. Now, economics, of course, economics is important. Now, one of the problems with economics, and I've got an economics background as well, economists are always good at getting things wrong. And they're very good at telling you today why their prediction of yesterday wasn't right, okay? And that's called economics, right? But so I don't want to give you war and peace about economics, but I want to just point out a few things now. I'm going to share my screen, point out to you now a few things, the way we see the world and how it's going to affect, how we think those things are going to affect your business. And these are the things that are what I call facts. So let me just bear with me as I share my screen and talk to these points. So what are the points that I want to make to you here? The points I want to make to you here, these are things what I call the canaries in the coal mine. These are the things that we can prove, right? And they're very important as to where the world's going right now. And the first two items are very interesting. Unemployment around the world has fallen significantly. Okay, so that means more people are in jobs. And I've said this is in relation to the US now, but it's absolutely the case in Europe and also in Australia. So in March this year, when COVID first set in, unemployment levels were at 15, in some cases 20%. But now they've dropped significantly. Now that's very important for as an indicator of where economic activity is going. The other very important thing, again, things we can measure, are world trade volumes. Now, world trade volumes are the amount of product that fundamentally are in the logistical systems around the world. And according to Oxford Economics, who I rate on these facts, they thought world trade volume might be down by something like 10%. Something like 30%. Early in the year, they're only down by 10%, and they're calling it the fridge effect, right? Because many people are buying fridges and microwaves. I mean, if you see the numbers coming out of Harvey Norman or JB Hi-Fi, some businesses are absolutely rocketing. So for those of you that have got, selling products that are consumables or retail driven, some of those businesses are absolutely flying. But of course, the other side of retail is very poor for many small retailers. I'll talk about that in a second. The other thing that's very critical for small business, and I mean in Australia, is that Europe, China, US, and Northern Australia have opened up, right? So New South Wales, and when I talk to my colleagues in WA, New South Wales, Queensland, there's no doubt that those economies have opened up, and that's very important for small business. Why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that because the effects of COVID, while they have been dramatic, are being controlled, I think is the right way to understand it. Let me just give you some important thinking on COVID now. COVID-19 is the real cause, right? According to the intelligence unit, the economists, they're telling me that something in the vicinity of around about somewhere between 1 and 2 trillion, that's 1,000 or 2,000 billion dollars in sales, have disappeared. And that just simply means that money has not been transacted around the world. But of course, COVID is marching on. The actual disease is marching on substantially. We have 7 million cases in India. And I've got a daughter who works for Stella McCartney in the UK. She's telling me, she's got a very senior job there. She's telling me that the UK is head back to lockdowns. So COVID is still on the march. The important thing, though, what we're trying to do is trying to get a feel for what's going on. The guy you should be listening to is Professor Peter Doherty. I'm sure most of you have heard of him. Professor Doherty really is probably the best brain, certainly in Australia, at the Doherty Institute. The Doherty Institute's out of Melbourne University. The Doherty Institute has provided what's called the genome sequencing. That is the molecular structure of COVID to all the vaccines being trialled. There's about 250 vaccines being trialled. Peter Doherty, I was on a phone call with him 2 weeks ago. He says that there are 3 that look exceptionally good. I'll tell you something funny about the vaccines. Peter Doherty tells us that one of the best groups of scientists in the world are in China. And he reckons that their vaccine is looking good. Now, of course, our dear Chinese friends didn't decide to do basic trials. They dished it out to the entire Chinese army. Imagine being in the Chinese army and they're dishing out the trial and you said, yeah, no, thanks, I don't want it. Wouldn't that go down well? But why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that because COVID-19 will be solved at some point. If it's slow, it'll be 12 months. If it's quick, it could be 6 months. So what I'm telling people and what I'm saying to my people and my businesses is that let's assume that COVID is not going to be fixed for 12 months, right? Just work on that for a second. And that's important in terms of your cash flows and your scoreboards. I didn't want to talk much about investment markets other than to say this, that we talk about masks, don't we? Masks are a big thing now. Well, share markets in the world have been masked by the US tech sector. I mean, the US tech sector, it's hard to believe the US technology sector is up 42% in 12 months, right? And so the rest, share markets have been driven up by that. If that tech sector hadn't risen like it had, and it comes down to about 8 stocks, the FANG stocks, which you all know are Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, Netflix, if those tech stocks hadn't done what they've done, world share market to be down 10 to 20%, right? So we've got this crazy situation. Retail properties, anyone's got a retail property, that's probably fallen 25 to 50%, right? It's very, very sad. I've got offices around the place and in the city in the strip shops. Well, a lot of those shops are now empty and will never open again. So the sectors that have been really smashed, retail, travel, hospitality, and of course, the university sector, tertiary sector is in real trouble. Residential property, interestingly, in Melbourne and Sydney is come off. It hasn't come off dramatically. It's because of the stock levels, right? So in trying to synthesize all that, what is it saying to us? What do we think? Well, no one's talking of a quick recovery, and I don't think we're going to get a quick recovery. So the question is this the eye of the storm? Are markets going to, value markets, asset markets going to correct? Do you know what? They could. And of course, these are the things that of concern, that any business with large debts and severely damaged revenue quite possibly could fall over. Let me talk about the great white sharks out there. You would have heard of the banks. Now, interesting, the banks are like a great white shark. Now, anybody knows anything about what a great white shark does? A great white shark circles when it finds a sniff of food. Well, the banks now, I'm getting calls fairly regularly from business owners and people that own property portfolios. The banks are ringing up and saying, look, you haven't paid your money for 6 months. When are you going to start paying? Now, this is particularly important for those businesses and those people on this call that maybe got big debts and revenue has been damaged. I'm going to give you some specific advice on how to beat the great white sharks, because they are very hungry right now and they are of concern. So this is something that is always the case. The very short-term outlook is very hard to call. And so any of you can really thinking about buying a growth asset, and a growth asset is a business. It's a property, it's a share, it's an asset. Hopefully, you've got to be very careful doing that right now, and you must be very selective, and that's really important. But of course, last night, this is point number 12 now, governments are dishing the dosh. Are governments dishing out the dosh right now? Can I tell you what the European, US, even the Chinese government, Australian governments, they're all dishing out money right now. It's been absolutely appropriate that they do. Someone said earlier in the call, talked to me today, that the world does have a lot of money. It really does, right? So I guess the point is, while there's a few canaries in the coal mine that look of concern, there's still a lot of money around. And what the federal government's done, the Australian government's got $1 trillion in debt. Australian government turns over about $650 billion a year. So $1 trillion, that's $1,000 billion, actually is not that big a deal. And our debt, what governments can do that none of us can do, is governments, of course, can decide when to borrow money, what interest rate. The Australian government's borrowing money at 25 basis points. The Australian government is borrowing money at 0.25, right? And they can decide when they pay it back, right? Now, none of us can do that. We'll have to deal with the bank, don't we? But the fact that the government's dishing serious money is important, right? And I've called it Formula One fences. So, 30 years ago in Formula One, people used to be killed in Formula One, but now they've got better with the fences. That's what the Australian government's done. That's very important. So with those facts now, I want to just turn the discussion to really now for businesses, what I think we should be doing. So just bear with me for a second. So for business owners and managers on the call, right now, we're in what I call mid-storm COVID-19. We're in the middle of the storm, right? And it's got a way to go. So, WTF, what do we do now is really the question that I'm asking, right? Andrew mentioned this. So we've just come off September and now in October, right? Where we would have normally had the grand final won or lost last week, of course, and we're now in October, we've got the finals coming. So the theme for this for business is really right now, what do we do? Well, my view of the world is there's really two things you can do. Like in a football final, you can attack or you can defend. Okay, now in both circumstances, attack and defense have to be done, of course, but I want to give you some framework around what to do in businesses now to attack and defend, and let me just explain what I mean by that. So my view of the world is right now, and for those of you that have got businesses that are going well, right? Let's think about attacking, right? So what we got to do to attack? A guy that many of you would have heard of was a guy called Dick Pratt, built a business called Visi. Now I didn't know Dick Pratt, but I knew his top 5 guys very, very well. I got a lot of learning out of what a Visi, and of course now Dick Pratt's son Richard runs Visi. It's the biggest cardboard box builder, distributor, call it what you like, in the world, right? Very close to a bloke called Donald Trump is Richard Pratt. I have no opinion on that. I just know that's the case. Now, what Dick Pratt was terrific at was your business is only this top line. There's only 3 parts to a business at the end of the day. There's R minus E equals P, which is revenue minus expenses equals profit. Now, let me tell you this. What do I know? And again, the number one factor in building business value is sales. Right? The word sales, unfortunately, has got a bit of a bad connotation, but without sales, no business is anywhere. I actually did some numbers this morning in relation to Andrew and Anthony's Business Camp Australia, which I had a deep involvement with, and they'll probably know this, but I'm sure they won't mind me sharing it. But the last sort of 9 years of their business, which was a 20-year journey, their average rate of sales growth was about 19% compound per annum. It was very, very big in the late 2009s, and then from there, they grew it by 18 to 19% compound return. Now, the average business, in terms of sales in Australia, grows at about 6% per annum. So how do you get 20 to 30% per annum sales growth? In 3 of my 6 businesses, we've grown it, one at 25% per annum, one at 36% per annum. It is all about sales growth in my view. Now, there's only 2 ways to grow sales in your business, right? One is organic, and organic is what you're doing day to day to get sales. And the second way is acquisitions. Now, acquisitions, I've done a lot of acquisitions. Acquisitions can be difficult. Acquisitions take a lot of capital. But the easiest way for you all to grow your business is organic. But what I talk about, and Andrew and Anthony can talk about, is what I call hypercharging organic growth. How do you hypercharge organic growth? So I'm going to give you a little test now. Here's what you need to do in your own businesses. It's very high tech dish. You need a green highlighter, a red highlighter, and a piece of paper and a pen. So what you should do is get a piece of paper out. I don't care if you've got 200 employees or 20 or 10. Write down all the names of the people in your business. List your staff on a piece of paper, and then get a green highlighter and a red highlighter. And then what I want you to do with that, let's say you got 100 people in a bit. Let's say you got a small. Let's use 50. I want you to get that list of people with the green. I want you to identify on that list of people you got who in the business spends 100% of their time truly selling. Okay, so if you've got 50 people, who spends Monday to Friday in the business truly selling? And then with a red pen, highlight the rest. Okay, now I tell you this, you'll find if you're going real well, you might have 10% staff truly selling. Now, very important point here, selling is not marketing, right? Marketing is very important, right? But marketing, one of the problems that businesses spend a lot of time doing is marketing, and I call it the black hole of mediocrity. It's a bit like IT. You can spend a lot of money on IT and a lot of money on marketing, but marketing, the best marketers I've seen, some of the guys on this phone call, understand that marketing is going to lead to a sale. But what's very important right now in terms of attacking and going out there, like in a couple of industries I'm in, I know there's a couple of competitors that are seriously struggling. I've got a couple of acquisitions that have come up because they're really struggling. So one of the opportunities to do is to find those acquisitions. But again, that's not easy, and you may not have the capital for it. But selling is very important. So you should be doing, everybody should be doing 2 things in my view. Hire people to sell. And what I mean by sell, a lot of salespeople are what I call relationship managers, right? They have good relationships with people that they've sold to, but they're not getting more sales out of it. It is all about selling more of your product and services, and people who are selling are doing all the activities that lead to a client or a customer buying from you. And if you do that and say, you know what, I've got a lot of people in overhead, but if you get some more salespeople, so my key message here is this time right now, the opportunity to attack, to do 2 things, get more salespeople. But this is the other point that's critical, the very last point on the page. Do very deep research. What do I mean by that? Very deep research. And again, it's high tech, you need pen and paper. Who are the companies or the clients you are aware of that you do not sell to now that you should do? And you need to do some very deep research as to which people are out there who could potentially buy your product or service that you're not talking to. And a salesperson is going to get in their face and get up close and personal and get sales. And that's what I'm calling the attacking part of the discussion. Okay, let me flip the coin now. So let's say things are tough and COVID-19 and your business is under attack, right? Okay, so you've got to defend. Defense is very important, right? Defending might be doing nothing, by the way. COVID-19 maybe, well, you don't do anything else. And that's very valid. And that's what most of us do, right? When things turn against us. But what I'm saying is here, right now, if your business is under attack, financially under attack, this is what you need to do. And what I mean by financial attack is if you've got your dear friends, the great white sharks coming for you, or you've got cash flow problems, you really need to do this. One of the things I find in business is that people often don't know their position, right? They don't know their assets, liabilities, cash now. If I know anything about businesses, I know roughly where the cash is every day. And every month I've got a very clear view on what's going on. Now, I'm an accountant, right? Qualified accountant. But what you got to do, you got to get your accountants to actually do something. Most clients tell me that their accountant just works out what their tax bills are. Doesn't do much else. What we've got to do is get your accountant up close and personal with your email and get them to do something. And so the very first thing you've got to do is look very carefully where you are. And then quite clearly, a lot of people say cutting costs. Andrew and Anthony introduced me to a guy called John Valmorbida, and you remember this, Andrew and Anthony. I remember John Valmorbida told me the GFC, you've got to move quick and you've got to cut costs if you have to. It's very important to cut the right time of cost. If you've got people that are doing general support roles, you know what? You probably can cut them. You don't want to cut your salespeople. I was talking to a business owner recently, and they said, "Oh, yeah, we had 5 salespeople, we got rid of 3." Get rid of salespeople. That's not the way to do it. You're better to cut the overheads. I talked about the banks and the lenders, right? So this is very important. If you're in serious trouble with the banks, or going to be in serious trouble with the banks, you've got to get to them first. If you don't want to get eaten by a great white, you've got to remove the great white. It's the same from the banks. But here's what to do with the bank. Whatever your bank you deal with, if you're going to have problems with them, what you've got to get with your account and do the template of a cash flow model for the next 2 years. Now, all the banks have their own templates. If you're a client, let's take an example, if you're a client of NAB, get their cash flow template and build a 2-year template, right? Now, of course, you've got to make some estimate here, because these templates go to the credit people. The credit people, you'll never get to meet people. They all work in the banks. If you give the bank your template and your cash flow, even if it's I've said the last point, even if it's a best estimate or it's not guaranteed, the bank is going to say, gee, here's a business person that understands that they're under attack. You've got a plan as to what to do. Get your accountant. You've got an external accountant, your external accountant to put it on their letterhead, put it on their bank template on their letterhead, and when it goes to credit, the credit guy is going to say, gee, aren't these guys looking a lot better now? Yes, it's a bit of smoke and mirrors. I'm not suggesting it's not, but what you have to do is you have to give them the credit guy's got to have some view that everything's going to turn around in a 2-year time frame. Because right now, what happens if the bank gets to you and you've got no preparation? The bank might say, you know what, and they might pull the trigger. Now I'm going to see banks are going to start to pull the trigger and call in loans. There's no doubt they are. Just on the banks for a second, they all turned off their dividends, right? And the banks are still very, very profitable. But there's about 270 billion of loans that are on a repayment holiday, right, up until September 1. Now, they've increased or effectively loosened the restrictions on repayment holidays. The banks right now are heavily getting back onto people. So I guess that's something you really got to think about. If you're financially under attack, you've really got to try and move quick and get in advance of that. And then hopefully the bank will help you through. But that's particularly important. So I guess in summary, guys, that's all I wanted to say. You've got 2 opportunities to attack and defend. And it may be you've got to focus more on defence depending on where you're at. But the opportunities to get kick some seriously good goals, there's no doubt of there. So with that, that's all I really wanted to tell you, and hopefully that was of interest.
Yep, thank you very much, Tim, and always delivered with heaps of passion and energy, and there's plenty going on around in that brain and mind, and if you listen to those key points, it certainly guided us. But Tim's been an expert on getting some very complex issues into some very simple formulas. And you may think it's very simplistic what he said, but I think when you think of the size of our business and the complexities of hundreds of thousands of parents and kids and IT, people all around the world, and admin in other countries, we had to coordinate so much stuff. And his simple philosophy of getting down to the mechanics, which Stefan really explains beautifully in a lot of his presentations, is really that key. Keep it simple, stupid. Those simple things we said right at the start can actually drive you through with the clarity to the success. So thanks again, Tim. Fantastic. We've got a chance now for a bit of open panel discussion, and we might introduce Stefan into the realm there. And we've got a question for you to get going, mate. So sort of what do you see as the new normals in business now? It's sort of, we've had to adapt and maneuver with this time, but are there going to be some sort of new things that you see businesses going to have to adapt and use from this point due to the COVID situation?
Well, look, the reality of that question is that when you look back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, as we look 10 years in the future, Anthony, one thing's for sure, it's always a choice to adapt. It's always a choice to make decisions as to where you're moving your business and or your organisation to. So the new, as it relates to COVID, is definitely about flexibility. It's definitely about adaptability. I mean, this is the first day I've been in the office for 6 months. I actually came in to make sure everything I left behind 6 months ago is still here. And I just, we've had a team that's been out of the office for over 6 months, and we have never, ever been as strong as we have been right now in terms of being effective, efficient. 14 out of our last 18 clients have been in places outside of Victoria. That would not have happened. 42% of our clients are in places outside of Victoria, and yet the last 90% of our newest clients are outside of Victoria. So adaptability, flexibility, look at your resources. What Tim just shared there, sales is the only thing that puts money in. Everything else takes it out. Be very careful about being, every dollar you spend is either going to help you keep a customer or help you attract a customer. I also agree with Tim's views on marketing. Marketing is the first step in a sales process. The opportunity right now to go to the market and help people throw their wallet in your direction, whether you're doing manufacturing, whether you're doing construction, whether you're doing online sales, whether you're doing education, makes no difference. It's your opportunity to get yourself into a benchmark level. So pivot, adapt, think outside the square, ask questions and get answers as to how you get moving into benchmark levels.
Brilliant. And we might throw to Andrew there and welcome back. He's had a bit of a back operation and has led some magnificent segments for us through the business series. And we know a lot of people on the call have gained a lot from his business nous. And he's one of the smartest, although he's my brother, he's probably one of the smartest young people I ever saw in business from a very young age. And I think Tim and a few of our board members said, you got to look after that piece of gold. I'll even say that in front of him, but he certainly was the gold in terms of, we're just talking sales, Stefan, and getting the money in. Andrew was the mastermind of not just himself, but a whole team of incredibly good sales and relationship people in our business. So our sales were really tough. They were sometimes, as Andrew and I know, Caulfield Grammar, I think he tried for 10 to 15 years, kept knocking on their door, ringing every month. And we finally got it. It became our biggest school, all their campuses in our childcare business. But it was a long sale. But I'm sure Andrew had some stories of some pretty short, snappy ones too, which were great. His question though, how do you know when you have moved or are moving through each phase? Andrew, and you addressed startup to rapid growth, value add and exit. So sort of how do you know? They may be those phases that are mechanical in looking at it, but how would you go about answering that?
Look, thanks, Ant, for that introduction and to all the kind messages that have been coming through. Yeah, this is, Stefan, your office looks pretty good. My new office is my bedroom at the minute. So, but it's nice to be still working and loving these sessions. Thanks for the intro, Ant. I just wanted to thank Tim for that wonderful 20 odd minutes. For those who've watched the first 4 or 5 series through this, will now recognise some of the inspiration that Anth and I received over 30 years, because one of my key points early on was find and keep an advisor or advisors on your board as a higher benchmark for you to report into. And there are a number of things that Tim mentioned in his presentation today that came back to my mind about our journey. And, one of them was his very easy way. He would say, yep, I've got the problem. Right, let's just get to the solution, right? So he'd very quickly summarise the problem, but he'd focus his entire time on the solution. So we was outcome focused. And as you can see from his energy, we had no problem each quarter reporting back to Tim and his colleagues, our board, in order to use that energy for our advancement. One thing we should do as humans is obviously aspiring through our own personal motivation, but having this advisory board always put us into this. Every quarter we knew we were going to be measured, and you can see obviously from Tim's positivity that we always left even more motivated than what we were. So that's my first point, to thank Tim. Tim's running wonderful businesses, and we continue to gain from him along the journey. A couple of other things that he raised with me along the way. One was, would we lose half our customers if we doubled our prices? We were in real cash flow problem. We were running a brilliant business, but we're losing money at all rapid growth, right up to 20, 30, 40, 50 million turnover. We were losing money. And Tim had a couple of gems through the journey. The great white shark one I used last week, Timmer, but about those private equity great white sharks. But I think that, would we lose half our customers if we doubled our prices? And I was trying to do the maths. I said, well, the maths is the same, even if we did. So we were bold enough at the time that we were not able to make profit from our current sales. So we did. We literally were bold enough to nearly double our prices, quite aggressive growth. And you know what? We actually grew further from it. People valued our business. They valued our pricing. We also had significant bank problems. We had significant troubles, and Tim was able to help exactly what he spoke through there about banks, getting our ducks in a row with our finances, helping us through some of the difficult times. I was talking to my daughter earlier this week when she said, were we nearly living on the streets, Dad? And I said, well, yeah, we nearly lost our house. I mean, failed to talk in these last 5 or 6 weeks about obviously the growth stages, Ant. But yeah, Tim will know acutely about when we had to back up to the banks and put on a show, and luckily Anthony's mate saved us one day. So we've had every trial and tribulation through our business. And one last one I remember Tim saying to us as we expanded nationally was to go aggressively and put on 6 or 7 salespeople. Well, I had the entire sales team on my own up until 21 years, myself, and we brought another colleague on. So at 21 years running the sales yourself, to be told by a board member, your rapid growth can happen if you invest. Remember, not cost, invest in sales. What did we do? We put on a state sales manager, and we got a few wrong, Tim, didn't we? We had to turn over a few, particularly in New South Wales. But on that basis of advice, we took a risk. We were bold enough to expand nationally, and we knew the market needed our particular service, but it was the sales that kept us afloat. And we remember ringing that bell every time we'd get them. Now, Anthony, just to conclude on the question, I think the unknowing moving from startup to rapid growth to value add and exit in any business, it's not Tim used to always say, timing is never perfect. Stefan has said this in last week's. It's never time. You can't perfect timing on when you go and acquire somebody, or whether you grow rapidly, or whether you bunker down. I know one of my best mates, Fraser Brown's business, I mentioned his father used to grow multi-million-dollar successes and then lose the lot. Whilst he was bold and risk-taking, he never measured. And Fraser said to me one day, and he's a very successful businessman in our vintage now, if he ever got the opportunity, what he'd do, like a rock climber, he would gain his vertical meters, and then he'd put his safety barrier in, so that any slip he would make in his further progression, the slip would be only minor. He was not going to risk his entire house, his world for his family, like his father did. And what he did is use this rock climbing technique to me to say, you got to protect. Tim used to always say this, create wealth outside your business where you can. Build it into your own home, your investment sides, as well as protecting that downside. But it doesn't mean you don't be bold and go for it, but making measured approaches. And I like Tim's attack and defend. In this day and age, particularly in a footy analogy, you've got to use both. So I think, Anthony, the excitement of moving through startup, rapid growth, value add and exit is sometimes subliminal. You don't even know it's happening, but within your team's growth, within the measures of the scoreboard, you'll know intuitively, when it's right to go and make that further investment, when it's right to start being tapped on the shoulder, or in fact seek, like Tim helped us to, put our business out into the world internationally. So hopefully it's sort of answered a few parts, but again, part of this series is small takeaways. We had a lot of takeaways there, Tim. Thank you. And I'm sure there'll be further questions.
Yeah, and that is summarised beautifully by Andrew's slides, which you can access on the website. We're just going to go to our guru, health and wellbeing coach, Judd Murray. And this comes up a lot, COVID, SATM energy. I mean, the amount of guys I've spoken to today or in the last 24 hours, it's Groundhog Day. I get up and do the same boring thing every day. Like, this seems to be it's really starting. I think in the last few weeks, starting to get to people, this extension of the lockdown, the enclosure. What would be your best advice there from that well-being and maybe that power of being in the now and the presence that we talk about, and getting that motivation back, ready to go at the right time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm getting that a lot myself. So people are coming to me, from all walks of life and saying, I'm losing it. So one of the big things that Mojo really is a reflection of our well-being. It's really about the health of your mind and body, which is why I've been involved in all these conversations, because business really is a macro version of the same thing. Business is what we do by definition. So the idea about Mojo is we've got to make sure that we attend to our health and well-being of ourselves, our family, our community, and our business. We've got to check our internal conversations all the time. Make sure that, we can fall into the habit of being negative, and negative promotes negative in the end. So we've got to, if we can't reduce the negative necessarily, at least turn the volume down. The idea is that we have to create a balanced input for ourselves as well. I mean, imagine if you had a best friend sitting beside you the whole time saying, this is rubbish, this is crap, this is not going to work, can't do it. It would become very deflating, and that's what happens to ourselves. We sit there and we negatively ruminate over and over and over, and we actually make ourselves go down. We actually sap ourselves of this mojo. I mean, it's really all about your chosen story. The idea is that everything's about your, I suppose, the big picture that you're creating for yourself. We're all living to a story. And the idea is that our story has to be simple, it has to be positive, and it has to be realistic. So every day you've got to spend that time doing the small bits and pieces, all those little bits and pieces that add together to create that sense of ability or sense of capacity. And really, as Andrew and Stefan and Anthony and now Tim has talked about, it's all about capacity. So motivation comes from that sense of confidence in yourself. I mean, you've got to do things that give you joy and give you value, because they come back, right? And they inspire you to go out there further. I mean, the last thing that Andrew just said was awesome. He's talking about all these trials and tribulations, a lot of which no one would actually know because you always think they're always so successful. But it's the trials and tribulations that build capacity. That's when we have to knuckle down. Fitness is a response to challenge. So personal fitness is a response to personal challenge. So this time, although it's difficult, is an opportunity for us to expand and excel. So if you can't be positive, like I'm saying, to at least try and be neutral and just get the work going. As Tim said, this will pass and opportunities are there, but we need to be fit and open to take advantage of them.
Brilliant, mate. Thank you very much for that. Some great wisdom there, as you've had in all our sessions. There's one just for Tim. He's on the line still with us, which is fantastic.
Yep.
And I think you'll love this one. How do I attract better paying clients and build a committed and motivated team?
Well, there's a lot in those two questions, right? So let me just give you my answer in relation to one. A guy once told us, this is in our financial planning business, we had sort of 20 offices throughout Australia in our financial planning business. And there's a guy out of the UK that I met, a guy called Richard Etheridge, who was way ahead of his time in the UK. You got to remember, the financial planning industry has had every problem you've ever heard about it had. But what this guy told us, he said the one thing you can control in any business is what you decide to charge for your product. And of course, in the financial planning industry, the problem with it, and it's since it's been resolved, but it's a slow road. People only got paid if they sold a product, whereas we moved to fee for service about 1997, right? And we sort of worked out, because what used to annoy me, so I came out of Price Waterhouse. We were charging, they were charging me out. I remember PW on my very first day, 1985. They were charging me out at $60 an hour and paying me 10. I thought, this is a good deal for PW, not me. But it really made sense to be charging for hours. So to answer that question, clearly you just can't triple or double your prices that simply. You've got to make it a clear assessment. Of course, your price has to be competitive, but just make a decision today to put your prices up. That's my answer to that, and see how you go. And Andrew and Anthony, better than most guys, a number of things that we tried. We said, so let's test it and measure it, right? So in terms of how do you get better paying clients, put the price up and deal with the same clients. That would be my advice. The second question, I think, Anthony, was in relation to better performing teams. Was that the question?
Yep. More committed. Yeah.
So again, this is not I could spend 2 days talking about this because this is critical, right? It's all about the people. So really, let me just simplify it. There's two categories of people. There's A's and there's B's, right? A's are the people, are your true believers, are the top performers that you'd be, absolutely devastated if they suddenly walked out on you. So they're what I call the A graders. And you know what? There's the rest, right? Now, this might sound harsh, but it's the way I see it. So for my A graders, I want to care about them. I want to know about their life. And I talk to the A graders about a career. One of the problems in Australia's got a very short and myopic view on employing people. You go to the US, if any of you, I'm sure many of you have spent time in the US, what do you notice about a lot of the service providers in the US, right? And usually at the restaurants and the cafes, you know what you notice about them? They're 60, 70, 80 years of age. In the US, people have jobs for 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the one organisation. There's this crazy myth in Australia, and I've got retiree clients, and I've got a lot of high income executives. When I say high income, I mean 300 to 5 million, right? A lot of them are hopeless, but they're real good at negotiating contracts. But they all talk about the next 2 to 4 years. I go, hang on a second. If you're on 350 grand in a good company and there's a lot of hygienes in big companies, why would you want to go? Why do you have to go? And I think, the LinkedIn to the world, in the footy world, it's the player managers, right? I've just got the message as on the phone that Joe Danaher is going from the Bombers. It's no shock. I have a bit to do with the Bombers, but now Joe's going because his manager's got him another $500,000. That's all he's gone for. And so I'm giving a long-winded question. Your A graders, talk about a career, talk about the next 3 to 5 years, and pay them appropriately, and also get them skin in the game based on the results of the company. Not an ownership situation, skin in the game. For your B graders, though, you need B graders, right? Now, B graders are people that are replaceable, but again, it's about a bit of love and care, and I talk about love and care, having some genuine love and care. Now, Andrew and Anthony are two of the most loving and genuine care people you'll actually find. They were bloody good at it. A lot of business owners are very ordinary at it. And so to love and care someone, it's about understanding their life and what it's important for. Now, you can change your way. Judd would have a lot more informed advice on this than I would. But you know what? If you genuinely care for people and you are doing the right thing by the customers or clients, and everybody's on board. But I mean, that's a team building training exercise. But you've got to do it yourself, and it can't be hollow. And don't we hear stories all the time of and look at the big corporates, some of the disasters, like the AMPs of the world. What a disaster business that's been. Ripped people off, looked after their boys' network. The big corporates have all done it, but there's been no genuine love and care for people. So to help out your A's and B graders, it's love and care, but your A graders are the ones you've got to keep.
Anthony, could I also add to Tim's answer on how to attract greater profitable sales? And I'd like to consider the particular markets you're in your business. For us, it was a finite market in that we were working with schools. So we basically knew that we had 8,000 schools in Australia to work with, of which 4,000 of them were the absolute targets. So you may remember when I talked about startup, it was about grabbing everything, rapid growth, doing a number of different things. We had 4 or 5 different products. Then we worked out which product we were most profitable in, which was the childcare. And our rapid growth meant just grab as much real estate around Australia as we could. And then value add was then making sure that the profitability of the sales became even more important towards exit. But what I want all the listeners to understand is the combination between some of the less performers and the great performers. And we always knew which side of our bread was buttered, because we would never, ever treat one of our small clients as if they were tiny and useless to us. Because you know what? It'd come back and bite us on the bum, because a small client would move to a big school, and then all of a sudden we would not be looking, and they'd put a competitor in. So we treated everybody equally. But having said that, what we then did is we measured the profitability of every school around the country, and then we put golden gates, we call them golden bricks, right, in our business. My father, chairman, called them golden bricks. So what we did is in our operations team, we put measures around protecting our golden bricks to never let that client go. Now, some of the smaller ones, we delicately work with them over time to allow them to think that they might not be able to afford our product anymore. But it would tell you what, we didn't get it right all the time. And when your reputation gets down the drain, you've got nothing. So you've got to protect your reputation, that you're a good guy all the way through. And I can tell you, the big profitable sales can be as hard or as easy as the small ones, but you've got to have a sales process system. So if you don't have a system that is followed up, managed, you could bring a big client on in 24 hours, or it could take you 4 or 5 years. You just got to know, you got to keep working on it. Over to you, Stefan.
Yeah, and I want to riff on this one too, because it's it all starts, and every 12 months, every small business, every business needs to do an audit on who is their ideal customer. Every 12 months, because things move and things change, as does the business you are running and growing. And therefore, as you continuously are on board, up to date and non-negotiable about who your ideal customer is, that's ultimately going to be the representation of the product and service that you are delivering. And they become, as I shared in the first meeting we had several weeks ago here, they become your community selling proposition. The community selling proposition can only happen if you are truly serving A-graders. So value created but not delivered is of no value. Value delivered but not perceived is of no value either. So it's really clear as leaders and as leadership teams, regardless of the size, you can have you in the mirror, that's your leadership team, if that's all you've got. But your ability to be true, to be really rigid about is the value we are communicating, which is marketing, and the value that we are delivering, is it in sync? Where is the scale? Ultimately, it takes an A-grade leader to lead an A-grade team that chooses A-grade suppliers to serve an A-grade customer. You get one of those three things wrong, you will never attract a majority of A-grade clients.
Well said.
Can I actually add something to this too? I know it might sound a bit odd, but there's a really good spin-off here. A lot of the time I'm dealing with clients, they talk about personality. They talk about attributes. Even the word personality itself is externally measured. And at the end of the day, it's an extrinsic measure. We don't think about our own personality per se. Other people think about our personality. And the business is the same. At the end of the day, we could think that we're A, but if the community, if our market sees us as B, then there's a lack of coherence. There's a lack of sync there. The idea is to make sure you genuinely are presenting the model that you want to present, that you want people to see. At the end of the day, it's the value that our market gives us that defines the value of our business, not the value that we want.
Brilliant conversation, guys. Yeah, really good. And I love Stefan's simple one about, we learnt that from the Donahue family. You look after your A grades and the way you treat and relate to people and protect your assets, all those things Andrew said, and your gold bricks. And I think, Stefan, that was great how you A-grade suppliers and customers and clients. It's just you got to have great, I call them superior people skills. And we can all keep working on that. But if you can learn from the best leaders who do that, that's probably, the real bonus of these series. There are some exceptional mentors or leaders out there that can teach you and role model how to do those sort of things. And I think that really is the essence. I mean, Andrew's and mine was such a people interaction, as kid to teacher, teachers to their staff team to their principal to our salesman, principals to our regional manager. It was a people interaction everywhere. You multiply that out, we have a think how many people interactions we had to have every day and be the best version of ourselves to make sure we kept on to, good A-grade clients. And so it was great discussion there, guys. There's
the thing about attracting, the whole thing about attracting is you must continuously be attractive. It's a doing word. It never stops.
Yeah.
So there's the essence of attracting new clients, which is a doing word, right?
Yeah. And Tim, that's a great one for you guys. A question come through here. Has come through. How do I attract better paying clients and build sorry, we've just done that one, haven't we?
Yep.
No, we said that one. Yeah, sorry. Stefan, I was going to move on to Stefan's. How do I protect my business owner time? I'm working harder than ever before and I'm always on the tools. A pretty familiar feeling we've all had in business. What would be your advice there?
You want me to go?
Yeah, go, Stefan.
This could go Tim's way too, and Andrew's and Judd's, no doubt. But look, for me, it's a choice. I love doing what I do. What I'm doing right now is operator time. This is not guru time. This is operator time. This is me in my uniform sledging away, and I love that. However, there's at least 4 hours non-negotiable in working hour time that I call my critical thinking time. And, there's times when I need to do that for 8 hours a week, but there's 2.5 to 4 hours a week that I protect like a fat kid on a Smartie, Anthony.
Yeah.
And it's my choice.
Because, sorry, go on, mate.
Go on, mate. You go.
I was just going to add, so let me just say this. I've made every mistake possible successfully made every mistake possible over about 30 odd years, right? So I've got that wrong a number of times, right? And so my response to that is what you've got to build is capacity, right? You've got to build capacity and you've got to build the business. A book I dish out all the time, and I'm sure you've all read it, but if you haven't, you've got to get it. It's called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Have you read The E-Myth? Some of my biggest investments have been $28 books that have given me the best insights of all time. But if you get a chance to read the E-Myth basically is about building a business, and this is what Andrew and Anthony did, and Anthony did as well as anybody, building a business that ran without you in it, that just kept delivering serious profit, right? Now, it's taken me 35 years to work that out, and I've got a few of those up and running now. I still work very hands-on in my financial planning and advice business. That's my primary game. But those other businesses, you just got to resource it. So it's about employing people to do the gig, right? Now, in small businesses, those of you out there that have got 1 or 2 or 3 people, you just can't find another 50, 100 grand to employ someone. I know that. But that's what you've got to do. So you've got to build capacity, right? And then get to a situation whereby the business just runs without you. And probably the world's best at that was Andrew and Anthony, I've got to say. So, if you get...
Oh, sorry, Tim, finish off.
I'm done, mate. I'm done.
All right, I might add on to Tim's great advice that he gave us, is that the transition for us wasn't ever a defined date. It's like Anthony ran the business for 15 to 20 years. I ran it for about 3 or 4 years, and then we built our senior leader management, CEO, CFO, etc., for the last 7 years, where we backed off. One, there was a definitive time where our skills did not match the role we were in. We needed higher level capacity, and it was an honesty looking at ourselves of where is it that you're best utilised in the business? Well, of course, for me, it was out in the field working in sales. It was no good me running the business. I was no good at it. Anthony's ran the business, but his ability to connect with customers, staff, operations team, the people, superior skills, and with the children and the programming with his wife, Liz. So we had to define exactly what the skills we needed in our back end to run the business, which was clearly, as we evolved, to be able to pay good people. Remember I said in our investment slide in value add is that you must invest in good people. It's not a cost, it's an investment. And lastly, to add to this, I would like to think that opening up the profit sharing of the business meant that more people of our A-graders cared enough, like it was in their bloodstream, that if we were on a holiday or we were somewhere else, that other people's skin was in the game. And I'm not talking about equity. Tim knows we had a few executives in our business that were on share-based plans, and we had a number of senior leaders in a bonus plan, so that the scoreboard was relevant for them every week as well. So there was more honesty about playing on the MCG with a proper scoreboard. It wasn't just tiddly-tots just going about the business. I tell you, in the years that we didn't have that, we didn't have the trust. The years we did have a share bonus plan and opened up for our senior management team to share in the wealth of our business, we had a greater buy-in and a greater output of success of those managers.
Can I say something too, that how many times, guys, have we heard people saying to us that in the end that the business is actually like, it's almost entrapped them. They feel a slave to the business. It's very successful, but they feel like they're totally inundated constantly and just working that wheel, just constantly on that treadmill. I think the 2 things that we've got to talk about, I'll say in answering this question is, and the guys have talked about it, one is value. Try your define and discover your true value, and then work on that and allow other people to do the same to help you. Rather than trying to hold on for grim life. The other thing too is to ultimately understand that part of success is the measure of your liberty or your freedom. If your business is not giving you liberty or freedom, if it's not allowing you to live a successful life, then the business success is questionable. So don't create a business that becomes a choke around your neck.
And depending on what stage in business you're at, because we've got to be mindful of,
Exactly.
Yeah, there are stages, and within stages, there's always time management, and this is the killer, right? So in the famous book of Sun Tzu, The Art of War, he says, and he rightly says, strategy without tactics is the longest road to victory. And he also says, which is befitting this question, whoever asked that question, well done, good question. He also says, tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So if you're a solo and or a minimal headcount business, which is where we all started, we all started there, and it's such a beautiful memory. The thing is, if you cannot protect 1 hour called the hour of power, where you are truly in strategy, 1 hour, you will never get it right when you have 50 people watching you circa Board of Works 1972, one's digging, 15 people are having smoko on the side. Just won't be different. So practice, 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 repeat, repeat, repeat. Business owner time, whoever asked that question, smart question. Business owner time, great reference, is your hour of power. You deserve that as the most sacred hour in your working week. And you will come off the tools.
Fantastic. A couple to finish up with, guys, and I think they might be relevant to people on the calls. But one to you, Tim, while you're there, and there are a number of things that drive the business, but I think especially with young people and coming through, you know, what are the key tips for a good financial model? And I know you'll have a nice simplistic answer for this, because a lot of them have got great entrepreneurial ideas and a great new product and the niche and the market and all that. But if the numbers don't stack up, it's a big risk, and they need money, they need investment. So just a couple of tips around that.
Yeah, well, I think that one of the things in business you can control is costs, right? You can control costs. And so, look, the reason most small businesses stay small actually is lack of capital, is lack of money, right? But so very simply 3 parts. One, that, you know, revenue won't be greater than expenses probably in the early stages, particularly if you're building a technology business or a startup. And don't worry, I've invested in a few and blown up a few bob, having a crack at a few things just to support a few people. But, you know, you've got to have a bit of capital. So you really got to get that lined up. But clearly, you've got to have a product or service, whatever it is, that's commercially viable, right? And it's got to be commercially viable. And so, hey, if you've got a commercially viable product, it then comes back to the sales, right? So I think that the you know, I work on basic scoreboards for the month: assets, liabilities, income, expenditure, cash in the bank, debtors and creditors. That's all I care about. But you've got to have a commercially viable product or service. And if it is, you might need some capital. And that's the reason small business stays small. If I often say, if you had another 100 grand, what would you spend it on? If you had another 100 grand, what would you spend it on? And often helps you then answering that question, focus on not spending stuff or money on the wrong things. But you got to keep it tight. I know it's a simple answer, but simple works.
Fantastic. And Stefan, just one for you. What are the best pieces of advice you'd find for young people now? Because there are opportunities there, and as Tim said, with the financial model, what do you see now as these you know, the best advice for opportunities in the present situation and the nearest future?
Yeah, so some of our younger age clients and younger entrepreneurs, what we're seeing is they truly get leverage. They truly get the power of technology and platforms, and they truly understand outsourcing. So I just want to park that there, because that's what holds plenty of great businesses back, regardless of age and or entry point. It's the inability to understand leverage. So what I'm seeing as a trend in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and also, you know, when I was a young buck having a crack 20 odd minutes ago, 20 years ago, I understood leverage, the lesson of leverage. How can I use other people's time? How can I utilize other people's money? Now, that comes with trust if you're going to do that one right. And ultimately, and this is the best advice I have for young entrepreneurs, other people's networks. So the aspect of young entrepreneurs, how can you reach out to other people's networks and be the poorest person on the table? How can you be invited to the best lunches and be the most curious? Ask the best questions. Get engaged, get involved, be attractive. You know, success, again, no different to being attractive. It's a doing word by being successful. So I would strongly recommend the continual energy and effort across, regardless of industry, if you can work on understanding other people's time, other people's money, which comes with reputation, and other people's network, that is the best advice. And I look at my 17 and 15-year-old right now, and they're all over it. They get it. It's really bizarre. It's great.
Yep. And Judd, just for get ourselves in shape to keep tackling what's there, the question came through, I want to be fit, but I'm flat out with work all the time, working 24/7. So some people are super busy, as Stefan was saying. Their business is in a great period of going gangbusters, but they're having trouble fitting in this self-care and exercise. Your best tricks or advice?
Yeah, quick one. This one, incidental choices. That's my big answer for that one. It's the way we do things. I mean, look at Andrew there lying on his back, right? At the end of the day, he can't get up and jump around, but he can still stay fit. How does he stay fit? By staying engaged mentally, by eating the right foods. Remember, it's a combination of so many bits and pieces. You know, we talk about our diet, nutrition first, taste, comfort second. We talk about getting up and moving rather than sitting for too long. If we do sit, we talk about sitting properly. We don't talk about lounging. It's the little choices that add up to create the big opportunities. So don't think about having to put the Lycra on and go for a big run or buy this equipment or spend time at the gym. Just think about the basic way you live your life. I often say to people, it's a bit like going to church on Sundays, getting to the car park and then starting a road rage. At the end of the day, it's the things we do most that define who we are. So that's my answer.
Brilliant stuff. Guys, just in the sake of time, we've got to tick over our normal time there, but thanks. Most people have stuck on the line there. Obviously, a few getting on with their day after our business lunch. And what's coming next? Well, the team here will have a bit of a discussion. We had such a great following and some great feedback. Thank you very much to all the callers and the participants that we may continue to provide maybe a short lunch, not a long lunch like some of us used to have. There could be a live session. We could also look at some more recorded stuff. Obviously, always available for business advisory, programming, and mechanics and or mentorship. Obviously, with Judd, any of that corporate health and wellbeing that you need for your organisations and your people and management. And certainly, Tim, is always the number one in the game for financial advice and advising, which is essential for anyone in business. But a massive thanks really to Andrew and just him and I having a chat and getting some stuff up and going. And probably it's been good for us just sharing a little bit of a snippet into what we built over those 30 years. But it was really insightful, some of his mechanics around the building and the structure of that. Stefan bringing in all those mechanics and all those hygienes and processes, systems for business is just so crucial, and your experience and working with so many different clients has been absolutely invaluable, I think, to the listeners. Thank you so much. And your team of Rob and Nikki have just been brilliant. It's always teams behind the scenes that really deserve a clap, and certainly have programmed beautifully and produced this series. So big thanks to them. Judd, just sensational without looking after ourselves, and it is a really challenging time. You can't do a lot of this sort of stuff. So I think it's been really insightful, and I think we've all gained some great tips each session from your health and wellbeing sessions. And Tim, absolute pleasure to have one of our key supporters and advisors and talk about a mentor in our own business. Been a pleasure having you today. So a big thanks to everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll keep in touch. Thanks a lot.